I always hope the photo is it's never on time. I don't know how when it shoots, but I always look like I'm having a stroke.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know when it snaps, but nonetheless, we're on.
Shalom, shalom, everybody.
Shalom.
Welcome, welcome. Come in, take a load off, and welcome once again to the Midweek MIDrash, in which we will transport you into Israel of the past and the days of the judges, in
Yes.
which we're following in the footsteps of Shimshon, otherwise known as Samson, the big strong guy. You know what I'm saying? And his exploits. And we've been doing this. We're in chapter 15. We've already completed 2 chapters. So if you're just catching us now, you can go back and look at our previous teachings. This is number 200, believe it or not.
Wow.
So you'll be going back a few weeks to do that, or at the very least, just read the 2 chapters, and you'll be up to date with us.
Yep.
Excuse me. We're going to be going through uh, word by word, verse by verse, and we're going to get a good understanding of what's going on here. Um, Most people know of Samson, but very few know some of the details. And a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things behind the scenes, a lot of things hidden in the text itself, in the language.
Yes.
And so we're going to go do a little digging today, getting out our picks and our shovels, and do a little exegeting, digging in the text, finding all the gems that are there. So at this time, our brother Herman, well, he's going to greet you, and then we're going to pray.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Thanks for coming back. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the teaching. May it go far and wide. And Bob, I'll just keep it short. We can begin with the prayer and we'll go on.
Okay, we're going to roll. Uh, Dr. Gilbert, if you would please do us the honor of the opening prayer.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. As we're about to pray, yeah, thou have favorable unto us. Mercy and truth are met together. Righteousness and peace have kissed each other. Be merciful unto us, for yeah, as we cry unto you daily. Unite our hearts to fear thy name, oh yeah. Bless our spiritual teachers this evening. Also, each family member that is present and this evening. Oh yeah. And may the grace of Yahweh be with us always. Amen.
Amen. Okay, I got a ringing in my ear.
Yes. Quite loud, that ringing in your ear. Quite loud.
Okay,
I don't know. It's
okay.
not here.
You might want to mute that phone there, please.
It's not here.
Shalom. Okay.
All
There
righty.
you go, sir.
All right.
Go ahead, Herman.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, folks. As always, I would like to begin with a review to help those up to speed if they missed last week, and of course, just a few pointers. So we completed chapter 14 last week, and we began chapter 15. We're in the second half, and we covered 15:1. And I stated that as Samson goes downhill to Ashkelon to fulfill his contract, so his marriage goes downhill. One of the things also that I stated is not to focus on the increments, not to focus on the individual situation that's going on in the moment, although it may be overwhelming at times and it may be frustrating, but not to focus on the increments, but rather focus on the whole picture. And I quoted from Romans 8, a lesson that we all need to remind ourselves of. Then I also stated that Samson got angry, and the expression that's used in Hebrew is that his nose burned. And that happened when he was denied his wife. And to his credit, as I said last week, he did not overpower his father in law, nor did he kidnap his wife. So, to his credit. So, today we're going to continue with chapter 15. Bob,
I
anything?
also just wanted
Yeah.
to mention that Hadassah has joined us. Shalom to you, Hadassah. Wandi, hola, hola to you.
Uh,
And the truth, the life, and the way We welcome you once again. We believe. I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing it right. Ni, I believe, is how you pronounce it, right? So welcome. You're so welcome to be with us once again.
Yes,
So
welcome to everybody.
amen.
And of course, Bob and I are looking for your input, maybe questions as well. And that's good because it'll cause some interaction and it'll liven the study. All right, so we're going to continue with, as I said, chapter 15, verse 2, because we had verse 1 last week. So verse 2, here we go. Her father said, and he's speaking now to Samson, I really thought that you, Samson, thoroughly hated her. Therefore, I gave her, your bride, to your companion. Is not her younger sister better than she? I find it's comical that the dad said, well, listen, the younger sister, she's better. Take her. It's like, wait a minute, she's better? And putting down the older sister, in a sense. Is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead. So this is verse 2, a little comical there. All right, so let's focus on this. Our father said, I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. And this, of course, is emphatic. And I like the way the New King James translators translated it by really thought and thoroughly hated. And I'm going to touch on that in a moment. So the dad says, Vayomer aviha amar amarti ki sano sneta. So there may be some truth to the father-in-law's reasoning due to Samson's departure and anger on the seventh day of the wedding feast and his extended delay. Remember that I stated in a past study that Samson went down to Ashkelon. That took time. He had to plan out his attack. That took time. Strip them of the clothing, come back. He gives the clothing to the Philistines that won the bet, and then he cuts out again. So the dad says, you know what? He doesn't want her already. So the extended delay in returning after his little visit from Ashkelon. And I hope you know what I mean by the little visit to Ashkelon. All righty. So as I stated, the language here is emphatic, and I have it color coding to share with you to bring out these nuances in the Hebrew text. So Vayomer Aviha. So the father said, Amar Amarti. Notice the root here, the Aleph Mem Resh. Aleph Mem Resh. These are the same words. They come from the same root, of course. So that doubling communicates or gives the idea of emphasis. And I'm going to touch on that in a moment. And then we see the same thing here again. Sano Senata. And so we have the Shin Nun Aleph, Shin Nun Aleph. Now, the dad could have said, I thought you hated her. But notice it says, I really thought that you thoroughly hated her. And once again, the New King James translators, they do a pretty good job in communicating the infinitive absolute. So the claim is emphatic. And we see that it is by the use of the infinitive absolute. And I highlighted here the A and the O in the word absolutes, because that's one of the ways in which you can tell. Here's the A and the O. And it's an absolute because there's no prefix, no infix, no suffix. Here we have a suffix. But when you have the infinitive absolute before a word of the same root, that is a convention in the Hebrew language for emphasis. And we have the same thing here, A and O. Now, that doesn't necessarily work with the hollow verbs, but with the regular verbs, it does. So one can say that he says, saying I said, hating, you hated her. So that's just to give you an idea on how the Hebrew language works. Alrighty. Moving on to verse 2, or staying on verse 2, therefore I gave her to your companion. Va etenena le mereyacha. Now, I think that at this point she was still in her father's house, because remember, Samson goes to the dad's house to get her. So I think physically she's still there, even though the dad says, I gave her to your companion. So I think what he's communicating there is that he betrothed her to the other man. All right, so let me just read this. Since she is still at her father's house, because that's where Samson went, what he probably meant was that he, the dad, betrothed her to the other man. Now, before giving his daughter to the other man, the father-in-law should have consulted with Samson's parents, but we don't see that in the text. So the question that I asked myself as I was chewing on this during my studies is, will the new husband fare better than Samson? And the reason why I asked myself that is because, remember, she betrayed Samson during the wedding feast. And I wondered the new husband would fare better. But like Samson, the companion's marriage would be short-lived because of the fire. It says that she got burned. So it doesn't say that she died. I'm assuming that she died, but that marriage was short-lived as well. Continuing, verse 2. And as I said, I find this a bit comical. Bob, did you want to say something there?
Well, yeah, when you finish, or I could do it my little 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, I thought I heard something there, but okay. Continuing verse 2. Now, you notice that I have the question mark highlighted, and here is the question mark in the Hebrew. This is not the article. Okay, so is not her younger sister better than she? Please take her instead. Ha lo achota haketana tova mimena? Tehi na lecha tachteha. All right, so since the father did not take the necessary steps to keep Samson as father-in-law for his older daughter, I wonder if he really wants Samson as son-in-law for his younger daughter. I wonder if he really wanted Samson, because if he did, he would have taken the steps to make sure that Samson was still interested, and he would have spoken to Samson's parents. So evidently, the father-in-law is playing games with Samson, but Samson will also come up with a little game of himself. And the game that Samson's going to come up with is burn the crops. That's the game Samson's going to play. It's unclear whether the Tovah, when he says, is not her younger sister better? And the better here is Tovah. And most of you will recognize the word tov, which means good. So it's not clear whether Tovah is referencing the girl's youth, that she's better because she's younger, or her looks, she's prettier, or her physique. It's not clear. But the father, according to the dad, the younger sister's better. So be that as it may, Samson didn't settle for the younger sister, because if he wanted her, he would have chosen her during his travels to Timnah. Right? That would have been his initial pick, but he wasn't interested in the younger one. Obviously, he was interested in the older sister. Now the dad says, please take her instead. Tehina, and there's that respectful na, translated please. Sometimes it could be especially in the King James, oh, take her instead. So sometimes in the older, like in the King James, if you see, oh Lord, oh this, it's the na, the respectful na. So tehina lecha tachteha. So no reason is provided as to why Samson refused the younger sister. Now, one may assume, and this is my assumption, that the Nazarite is mindful of Leviticus 18:18, but this is just speculation on my part. And I have Leviticus 18 here in 2 versions, and it says, nor shall you, the Lord is speaking to Israel, to the nation of Israel, through Moses, nor shall you, Israel, take a woman as a rival to her sister to uncover her nakedness while the other is alive. Now, whether Samson had this in mind, I don't know, but I'm sharing the point with you. The New English translation says, You must not take a woman in marriage and then marry her sister as a rival wife while she is still alive to have sexual intercourse with her. So, speculation on my part, but it is possible this is why Samson may have not wanted her, in addition, that he was not interested either. Okay, that's verse 2. Bob, what do you have?
Okay, I got a couple things. Number one is tahina, which is made from chickpeas, is delicious like falafels. And I love falafels, and that tahina is really good. And it's good for you also. I also wanted to share from Hadassah and the communication breakdown. Okay, I truly think that communication is an art, just like any other art that needs to be practiced. And that's very profound, Hadassah, because what we're missing today is face-to-face communications. We have these little emojis and the I heart you type of nonsense, right? And we're not really communicating. We're not communicating.
Right.
And like Trump, the book, remember the art of the deal. You need to speak to somebody, look at them in the eye, and make a just and proper deal with somebody with all the cards on the table. And apparently, back in the day, if you had daughters, you were a businessman. You were a salesman. You were in business, and you were involved in these transactions and making decisions for the daughter, and so on and so forth. And before I get into that, I just want to complete her thought here. Says the lack of communication can lead people to assume things that are not so. Example of Samson's father-in-law, and assumed he hated his betrothed. And again, there's an old saying about assume. When you assume, make an ass out of you and me, you ruin everything. So when we make assumptions, we're usually going to be wrong because we think that we got it all figured out. And generally, unless we have, and we're utilizing the gift of discernment, we're making decisions based on emotions. We're basing decisions based on anything but the truth. As my brother Gilbert would say, there's the three sides to the story: your version, my version, and the truth. So we tend to flower our side and prejudge and pre-paint, our side. But I wanted to mention here that Samson's father-in-law felt that he had to make a counter proposal because he had received the bride price from Samson. Okay, so we see similar marital transactions in the account of Laban and Jacob regarding Leah and Rachel. Only it was the reverse, that he wanted to get rid of the first daughter, the elderly, or not elderly, but the elder daughter,
The older.
before the younger. And here, basically, the father-in-law is doing a similar thing. He wants to push her, but since she's now out of commission, now she's going to be the salesman for the younger. So we see that happening. It's Bereshit, Genesis 29, 16 to 28. We don't have to read that. But then also Saul and David, the interaction of the kings.
Right.
1 Samuel 18, 19 to 23. And we know that Saul, when he was rejected, and then when his daughter, who was betrothed or married to David and then mocks him, she no longer produces any offspring. And if you're going to cut off Saul, then that had to happen. The bitterness of his daughter, eliminated the bloodline. And so, but again, the idea of making substitutions in the last second, and we know that's always a questionable decision. You're playing in a big game in baseball, right? And your hitter, who is really, he's been with you the whole season, he's doing well, and you decide, well, let me take him out and put in a pinch hitter, because the pinch hitter, the pitcher is a righty and it's a lefty, which is a good advantage for the hitter. So let me put in a right-handed batter and do a substitution. And when it turns out that he doesn't get the hit, he doesn't succeed, that you have all that, you reflect back and say you had your guy who was with you all year long, proving his value, and you substitute him in the last minute. So again, that whole thing of what Hadassah is saying about the assumptions, the misunderstandings, and again, that really sparks the imagination of the communicative skills. Some people know how to deal with people. Some people are snake oil salesmen. Some people are used car salesmen. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in the stereotypical way. You could be an honest used car salesman, although that sounds like an oxymoron. But you could be an honest salesman. You can be. You can be an honest lawyer and not an ambulance chaser. But you make these assumptions and you communicate. Some people make you feel like $1 million, and meanwhile they got their hand in your pocket. And people can butter you up and flatter you. In fact, more treachery has been performed over the years by flattery than by insults. In fact, going back to the 70s, when Nixon was in the White House, there was Brezhnev was the head of the Soviet Union when it was still intact and still a red menace and such. And he says, we can achieve more through détente than with the bomb. In other words, through schmoozing, through chatting you up and, getting a couple of things and getting you to sign on the paper, getting you to agree to the terms and not realizing that you've been hoodwinked. So some people have that gift of gab and they can exploit you, which is why, we have to be careful. We have to discern situations. We have to have the ability to say, let me get back to you on this, instead of having these quick knee-jerk yes or no, because a lot of people have been taken advantage of. And that's a sad thing. A lot of people have had their homes, their property, their cars, their children taken away from them because of decisions that were demanded right on the spot, And anyway, so anyway, I thought that was interesting, and it reminded me of Jacob and Laban with Leah and Rachel at this time with the quick shift, the sleight of hand, the magician makes you look here, and all of a sudden you should have been looking over here, and because our attention was diverted, and the schmoozing, calming voice told us, "Don't worry about it. Don't look over there. There's nothing happening. Everything's okay." Just like in 2020 when the neighborhoods were all going up in flames, there was people saying, "Well, there's peaceful demonstrations. A little fiery. You see fires in the background. And well, these have been peaceful demonstrations." It's like, you're going to believe me or you're going to believe your eyes? And some people are such smooth talkers that they really make you question reality. And that's what the adversary does. He's got the silver tongue. He's the father of lies. And he will sell you the Brooklyn Bridge. He will, sell an ice bucket to an Eskimo in an igloo, He knows our weaknesses. He knows these things. We present them to him. They're obvious. Easy money. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there. And thank you, Hadassah, for that really cool observation.
Yeah, that was a very good one, Hadassah, regarding the communication. So important. You're right. It is an art. It is. Okay, let's move on to verse 3. And Samson said to them, after the dad told him, and Samson said to them, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. Now, I wonder, unfortunately, the text does not give the tone of voice. So what do you think, folks? Do you think Samson said it in a very calm, mellow, confident way? Like something like this? Well, this time I shall be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them. Or do you think he said, oh yeah, well, this time I will be blameless regarding the Philistines if I harm them? What do you think, folks? What tone of voice do you think Samson communicated that thought? Because that was a serious threat there.
I think that's all capital letters.
Yeah, I go with the latter. I think being the character that he was, I think it was in a very angry tone of voice. And I'm going to try to communicate that in the Hebrews to see if I can do it. I'm going to do a Samson with a Brooklyn accent, folks. So
can I just insert one thing real quick?
Sure.
When I was talking about assume, I was talking about donkeys, okay? When I said make an ass out of you and me, a donkey. Because when we're talking about the account of Samson, we got the jawbone of a donkey, otherwise known as in our King James as an ass. It's an
Right.
animal. You look in the zoological account, and an ASS is a donkey. So that's what I'm talking about. Make
Yeah.
an ass out of you and me. Make a donkey. Made a
Yeah.
stubborn.
Well, we're going to get there because the donkey incident is in this chapter. It's later on in the chapter. So just for the sake of trying, Samson says, "This time I shall be blameless. Niketi pa'am mifilishtim ki ose ani mi'am amim ra'a." I don't know if he spoke it that way, but I tried. Alrighty, so, and Samson said to them, Vayomer lahem Shimshon. So the them here, the them refers, of course, to the father-in-law and others present. The text doesn't say who was present. Could have been the younger sister that was present, maybe the servants, but it says, and Samson said to them, and maybe a few bodyguards as well. Now, Samson's threat is made public and will surely make the front page of the Philistine Times because this is serious stuff. This is going to make front page. All right. And I'm pretty sure that the word went out. Oh, Samson's out here. He's angry. Front page, Philistine Times. All righty. So, Niketi hapa'am mi Philistine. So, in light of the betrayal, Samson has automatically deemed himself innocent of any future wrongdoing. I found this comical as well. I don't know, folks, when I read this and I think about it, it's like funny. It's like, okay, Samson's saying, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to get you and I'm blameless. I'm blameless. So he deems himself innocent already of any future wrongdoing. Okay, Bob, verse 3. What do you have on verse 3? It was a short one.
Okay. I think that's just sort of a bridge verse. So I don't really have much there, but I agree. He's not, he's acting on emotion. He's acting reflexively. He's not considering the offer of his father-in-law. He's rejecting it.
Right.
The fact that he doesn't even say no, but he goes right into this tirade is evidence that there's not much reconsidering reworking the deal here.
Yeah. Bob, I'm glad that you said that. I'm glad that you said that he is angry, he's under emotion. And the English translation puts an exclamation point, which the Hebrew doesn't have. At this point, he's really angry. But when it comes to what he's going to do, it seems that he's working very methodical and he's not blinded by emotion when he does what he does. And we'll get there in a moment. All right, shall we go to verse 4?
Let's rock it.
Okay. Then Samson went and caught 300 foxes, and he took torches and turned the foxes tail to tail and put a torch between each pair of tails. And this is what I'm saying that, and I'm glad you mentioned that. Again, initially angry, really angry, and we all know that our emotions can blind our reasoning. But after that initial rage, he is working very methodically. So let's go into this a little bit. So the term foxes, shualim. Now, although shualim is traditionally rendered foxes, a consensus favors the term jackals. And I have several dictionary entries here. The Fawcett Bible Dictionary says, quote, that jackals were common in Palestine appears from the names of places compounded with shual, as Hagar Shual and Sha'albim. So the Fawcett leans towards jackals. The Eastern Bible Dictionary, in Judges 15, quote, in Judges 15, the reference is in all probability to the jackal. The Hebrew word shual, through the Persian shagal, I guess, I don't know Farsi, so shakal becomes our jackal, canis arius. The reasons for preferring the rendering jackals are: one, it is easily caught than the fox, And 2, jackals hunt in large numbers and are still very numerous in southern Palestine, unquote. And one more, the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia. It says, quote, the natives of Syria and Palestine do not always distinguish the fox and jackal, although the two animals are markedly different. Now, here I have a picture, and on the surface, they do look very similar. I tried to get images of the Middle Eastern fox and the Middle Eastern jackal. And so as you can see, on the surface, they look pretty similar. And I can see why the ancients would not necessarily distinguish between the two. One of the things that stand out here are the ears, the size of the ears of the fox versus the jackal, the golden jackal, which this jackal, I believe, is a Middle Eastern jackal. Alrighty, moving on.
Could I say something real quick here?
Of course, Bob, of course. Absolutely.
To the shoal, the definition is, again, fox or jackal, but it comes from the idea of being a burrower, a digger into the ground. So anyway, I'm just looking at details about the creature that might inflict irony in the situation. And the shoal comes from, let's see, the shual, which is the fox, or the jackal, comes from the word shoal, which means the hollow of the hand or a handful. So the idea of these creatures being a handful might also play into the fact that they travel in packs, like the jackals travel in packs, which might be why Samson was able to capture as many as he did. But it's interesting and hard to envision how he takes torches and turns the fox's tail to tail. A torch between each pair of tails. But, that's what the text says. So I was curious if there's anything in the Hebrew that might give.
I'm going to share a point. I'm going to share a point regarding that. I don't think that it was that the torches were on the tails per se, but we're going to get there in a moment. Okay, moving on. Alrighty, so then Samson went and caught 300 foxes. Vayelech Shimshon vayilkot shelosh me'ot shualim. So, as with his methodical attacks upon the 30 men of Ashkelon, we find Samson's meticulous mind at work by capturing and weaponizing foxes or jackals. Now, the question that I ask myself is how were they trapped? Did Samson work alone? Because if he did, it probably took a long time to get the 300, or was he assisted in order to procure them quickly? I don't know. The text doesn't say. Either way, after the initial anger, right? So either way, Samson, after his initial anger, did not operate under a rage that blinded his intellect. Rather, he strategically executed his attack upon the crops. And we're going to see that in a moment. So Samson may have gotten his cue from Gideon, because when we read the Gideon narrative, we have the number 300, 3 companies, and torches. And these are the common denominators in both stories here. The number 300, 3 companies, and torches. Bob, I'll get to the tying the torches to the tails in a moment. Alrighty, so to the Gideon passage. In Judges chapter 6, it says, quote, then he, Gideon, divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet into every man's hand with empty pitchers and torches inside the pitchers. So as I said, the common denominator is 300, 3 companies, and the torches. So ostensibly, it is understood that Samson also divided his army of 300 into 3 regiments, each for a specific target: the grains, the grapes, and the olives. Now, keep in mind that by tying them tail to tail, it would be 150 pairs. So it would be 50 to the grains, 50 ostensibly to the grapes, and 50 to the olives. Now, this is a little off topic, but I felt led to share it. Just a little off topic, but I think it does connect, and it's a good reminder for me, and I want it to be a good reminder for you. Never underestimate what the Lord can use to accomplish His will. And in this case, they are lowly animals. Lowly animals. Because remember, the Lord's will was to raise Samson to begin the conflict, to begin to deliver Israel from Philistine dominance. And this is one of the agents that the Lord decides to use. Apparently, He inspired Samson to do it this way. So never underestimate what the Lord can use to accomplish His will. And a well-known passage, which kind of connects, just a little off topic, 1 Corinthians 1, but God has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. The Philistines considered themselves wise and superior. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to put to shame the things that are mighty, like the Philistines. And the base things of the world, and the things which are despised, God has chosen, and the things which are not, to bring to nothing the things that are, that no flesh should glory in His presence. And that truly is a reminder for me. Verse 5. Bob, I haven't forgotten the tails to tails. Verse 5. Anything on verse 4, Bob?
No, that's my comments from there.
Okay, so let's continue then with verse 5. When he set the torches on fire, he let the foxes go into the standing grain of the Philistines and burned up both the shocks and the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and the olive groves. All right. So when he set the torches on fire, Vayaver Eish Ba Lapidim. Let me read that again. Vayaver Eish Ba Lapidim. So in general, folks, torches were made from resinous pieces of wood wrapped in an absorbent cloths and usually soaked with flammable substances. So that's usually how torches were made back then. And of course, once ablaze, the foxes or the jackals would scatter throughout the fields in panic because of the torches. They'll scatter. Now, Samson's success, his military operation would increase if he dispatched his troops by night, a surprise attack at night. So his operation would increase, the chances of him doing more damage. All right, here we go, Bob. This is my opinion on the tying of the torches. I don't think the torches were held in place by the tails per se.
Let me just interject really quick 1 second.
Sure.
Dr. Jay Smithers is making some comments. I'll get to him after you complete this thing.
Okay, let me finish this slide and then we'll go. Okay, so I don't think the torches were held in place by the tails per se. It seems to me that Samson tied both the tails and the torches with rope. So there's like a three-way connection there. He's tying the two tails with the rope, and he also makes like a T and ties the torches with the rope as well. So that's how I think he may have done it. Now, pairing the animals would not allow them to scurry off quickly in one direction, because by doing that, that would extinguish the torches quickly. So it was a good idea to tie the fox's tail to tail to prevent them from going off. They would go off slowly and thus do more damage with the fire of the torches. Yes, Bob, the comment.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the I don't know if you could see it, but he's quoting, Dr. Jason Smithers is quoting Isaiah 53:5 about whose stripes is he talking about, from Psalm 22:16, whose hand and feet are being pierced, Psalm 110:1, who is David's Lord, let's see, Exodus 23:21, the one whose voice you would listen to, his name is holy, who is he? Yeshua is Yahovah. Genesis 3:8. Let's see, about walking through the garden. In fact, the halach in the ruach of the day is the way that we walk as Messiah walked, in the character of Yahuwah. Okay, Yahuwah. Okay, he walks in the garden. Okay, so Elohim has a voice and walks. Do-do-do-do. Let's just see what else.
But these passages are talking about, these are messianic passages. I don't know.
Right.
I don't see the connection with Samson.
I don't either. So I just want to answer this and not get distracted. We're not going to go too far off, but I just wanted to mention that as far as his suggestion, perhaps he's wondering if we believe this stuff. Absolutely. We believe that Yeshua is Yahovah. He is the fullness of Yah. He's not a partial Yah. He is fully Yah. And he is the atoning work of Mashiach ben David, the son of David Hamelech, and the scepter is in his possession. So he is the seeker of the lost sheep of the house of Yisrael, of both northern and southern houses of Ephraim and Yehudah. So we believe that, but I don't want to get too distracted off these subjects, because these are all beautiful messianic things, which I believe we would say we believe all of them. So it's not if you're kind of testing us, seeing if we believe this stuff, we do. So we're gonna let it lay there and continue with our study in.
Yeah, Bob, if I remember correctly, we touched on Isaiah 53 way back. I think that at that time I was on the phone as opposed to the video, but that's way back. Alrighty, continuing with verse 5. And burned up Vayav. Now, depending on the degree of the crop damage, a food shortage indeed would ensue, and not to mention the financial loss due to the lack of commerce. So this was a very serious thing. Okay, the Philistines burned the in-laws, burned the wifey and the in-laws, and Samson did some burning of his own. So the Philistines, now I found this very interesting, folks. Please pay attention. The Philistines did not forgive or forget what Samson did with the animals. They didn't do this. And I don't think that this is a coincidence, because when Samson was captured, what did they do to him? Of course, he was blinded, and they had him grinding their grain like an animal. So what Samson did with the animals to destroy their grain, their crops, it seems to me that the Philistines even scored, so to speak, by causing Samson to grind their grain like an animal. And I don't think that was a coincidence. Alrighty. So the shocks, the standing grain, as well as the vineyards and olive groves. So here we go. Vayav migadish ve'ad kama ve'ad keren zait. So the shocks refers to heaps or piles of harvested wheat, likely awaiting threshing, while the standing grain, of course, points to crops that have not been harvested. Now, this in general would be late May or early June in general. And keep in mind that the land of Israel has different topography, and the crops ripen at slightly different times throughout the land. The Philistines, of course, are in the coastal, which is a lowland. Now, although the grapes and the olives were yet to be harvested, the fire proved devastating. And again, in general, their harvests are usually, the grapes would be in July, August, around that time, and the olive harvest would be in September. And I'm not referring to when the first fruits will be presented. I'm referring to the general harvest, usually July, August, and September. Okay, verse 6. But before then, Bob, do you have anything on 5?
Yeah, I do. In
Yes.
fact, what you're just referring to is the Bikorim and the harvest. That it
Yes.
refers to the standing grain,
Hmm.
the wine, and the oil, which is part of
Right.
the traditional blessings of Yah, and the
Right.
grain being the barley and the wheat, and then the wine and the oil. And as you said, the oil is of the vine of the olives, which
Correct.
is in September, which is actually this coming Sunday, is the Shemesh Chadash. So it is celebrated, and just make real quick reference that if you check the temple scroll 11Q19, you will see that the celebrations of the new wine, the oil, and the wood offering actually take place after Shavuot, Pentecost, and the barley of the first fruits. So you can read more of that in the Torah.com, in which it talks about the wood celebration as written in Torah. It gives backup to that. And again, it's interesting to see the times of celebration during the
Right.
Second Temple, and this was very commonplace that the wine and the oil would be celebrated. And as you said, there it is: the grapes in July, August, and the olives in September. And then after that is the wood, which the 12 tribes would bring into to use for the altar for sacrifice. And we're doing that teaching this coming Sabbath. Last Sabbath is what I taught on the Shemen Chadash. If you need to know more information about the celebration of the new oil, and it's something new to you perhaps, but it's something old. It's
Mhm.
something of antiquity, and it's something that we can praise Yah and honor Yah in a way that they did back then. So we're looking for ways to praise Yah. And First John chapter 5 says, how do we show our love for Yah? By keeping his commandments. And his commandments are not a burden for us because we've overcome the world by our faith. So it just a good balance is how did they do it in the past when they were honorable and loving Yah? And instead of trying to create new things like with bunnies or trees or wreaths and inventing new ways of celebrating the truth, we can go back in time and see how did they do it? How do they celebrate? There's this whole section of how they celebrated Feast of Tabernacles, of Sukkot. It's just amazing stuff. And of course, we cannot literally keep these Moedim because we don't have access to this kind of a harvest. At least most of us don't. We don't have access to Jerusalem or a temple or an active, um, uh, repenting and faithful Kohanim priesthood. We don't have any of that, but we can do it in remembrance in the Zachor. We remember these things. We remember the significance that he places in our lives. And so, just as a quick aside, that
Mhm.
when it mentions these things right here,
Yes.
the grain, and whenever you read in the Torah, it says, how often does it say, "I will bless you with the grain, the new wine, and the oil"? Grain, wine, oil, always,
Right.
always throughout the scriptures. So I'll just stop with that.
Okay. Okay. Alrighty, folks. Moving on then. Verse 6. It's a long verse, so I had to divide it in 2 slides. Then the Philistine said, who has done this? And I can imagine they were angry. Who has done this? And they answered, Samson, the son-in-law of the Timnite, because he has taken his wife and given her to his companion. So the Philistines came up and burned her and her father with fire. Oof. So there's the fire. Samson burns and they burn. All right, moving on. Then the Philistines said, who has done this? Vayomeru Philistine, mi asa sot. So one can only imagine their fury, their facial expressions, and maybe even the vulgar language that the investigators said as they were saying this, right? Who the heck did this? And bim, 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 and we'll go on. And they answered. Now the they here is some unspecified group among the Philistines. They're not identified. By Yomeru, and they answered. Okay, and okay, so then it says, and they came up and they burned her and her father with fire. Vayisrefu otah ve'et aviha ba'esh. And as you can see, I've highlighted her and her because in the Hebrew they don't distinguish. It's her is written two different ways. You have the hey with the mapik, and then you have a hey with a comets at the end. So there are two different ways in which her, whether it is her pronoun or her in the possessive, it doesn't matter. It would either be a hey with a mapik or a hey with a comets or a comets. All righty. So here's the thing. Mrs. Samson favored her countrymen over her husband in the wedding to avoid getting burned, yet her disloyalty was met with disloyalty because they said, get the answer from us, or if not, we'll burn you. So the assumption is, I got the answer, you're not going to burn me. But yet she got burned. And you know the old saying, Yeshua says, the measure, right? The measure that you use will be measured back to you. She was disloyal and they were disloyal to her. So in Matthew 7:2, the measure she used was measured back to her. Now, of course, Matthew 7:2 doesn't say it that way, but the principle is there. Yeshua says the measure that you use will be measured back to you. And folks, one of the things that I got from this is we have to be loyal. We have to keep our words, especially to our spouses. Be loyal to your spouse.
Yes.
Keep your word to your spouse and to those to whom you give it. If you tell them, okay, I'm not going to burn your house down, don't burn the house down because you say you're not going to do it. All righty. So instead of retaliating against Samson, because they should have done that, he's the one that did the damage. Instead of retaliating against Samson, the cowards vent their anger on a defenseless family because from their point of view, the Timnite, the father-in-law, is guilty by provoking Samson to do that. So that's how they saw it. So be that as it may, the Philistines fight fire with fire. Samson burns, and then they turn around and they burn Samson's family. So the Philistines fight fire with fire, and with it, they raise the ante. They raise the ante of the conflict by most likely killing Samson's wife. Most likely, even though the text doesn't say it. Now, the fire. Although this is not easy, folks, I know it's not easy, especially when you're angry and someone does something to you that is devastating. Although not angry, you may want to adopt a different type of fire retaliation. The flames that burns the enemy's conscience and not his body or his property. And I know it's not easy. Proverbs 25 says, as it is written, if your enemy is hungry, give him bread to eat. If he is thirsty, give him water to drink. For so you will heap coals of fire upon his head, and the Lord will reward you. This is another type of fire that you can use to retaliate as opposed to physical fire. And I know that it's not easy, but it is scriptural. Now, by fighting with the proverbial fire, right, you will increase the chances of winning your enemy. If, however, you don't win your enemy over, at least you de-escalated the conflict for the moment. But it is wise to never let your guard down. And as Yeshua says, be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Be wise when it comes to dealing with the enemy. Okay, Bob, before we move on to verse 7, is there anything you'd like to share?
Well, I think I might have mentioned this before, but it's like when Messiah was arrested in the days prior to his, or the hours before his execution. Remember, they said we need to sacrifice one person, and then for the nation, which the Ruach had actually given him to say, the Kohen Hagadol, the chief or the president of the United States of Israel, said, let him die, sacrificial lamb, so to speak, so that we'll save. Because if we don't, the Romans are going to burn Israel down. They're going to destroy our temple and scatter us. And what happens? Because they do reject the one that as our friend mentioned in the book of Exodus, that when he comes, you better listen to him. They don't listen to him.
Right.
And because they reject him, they are scattered to the wind. They are scattered. Their temple is destroyed.
Right.
And many of their lives, I'm sure, are lost. I'll bet if we go back, if it was possible to check the lives of those who said yay to executing Messiah, I'm sure not one of them lived a long, happy life afterwards.
Yes, indeed. It's sad. Okay, verse 7. Samson said to them, since you would do a thing like this, I will surely take revenge on you, and after that, I will cease. Boy, this is amazing. All right, since you would do a thing like this, im ta'asun kasot. The thing here that's being referred to is the burning of the wifey and the father-in-law. That's the thing. Since you would do a thing like this, it's the burning. There is, however, no mention of the younger sister or possibly of servants being burned. And then Samson continues, I will surely take revenge on you. Ki im nikamti vachem. So if only the bride and her father were killed, right? Because Samson says, I'm going to take revenge on that. So if only the bride and the father were killed, then exacting vengeance would be the lives of a male and a female Philistine, right? 2 lives for 2 lives. That would be taking vengeance. But Samson's idea of vengeance is a great slaughter, and we see that in verse 8. That's his idea of taking vengeance for the 2 lives. And then it's after that, I will cease. Ve'achar echdal. So only when fully satisfied will Samson end his retaliation associated with the burning of his wife. Now, given that the Philistines will respond to Samson's slaughter, what Samson will bring about, they too will want to exact revenge, and it just goes on and on. It goes on and on with the feud. Nothing new under the sun. All right, so thus the feud will continue indefinitely until one or the other is dead. Unfortunately, it has to come to that many times, and it's unfortunate. So unfortunately, this ongoing saga of Israel and her enemies, this is it. This is what's constantly going on. They are always at odds and can never coexist. And unfortunately, one has to eliminate the other. And we see it today. There's nothing new under the sun. We see it today with Israel and what's going on today with Hamas and Hezbollah and so on. Bob, I'm going to leave it here at the end of verse 7. This is a good time, a good verse to end based on the time. And next week, folks, we'll continue with verse 8 and this very interesting expression, hip and thigh, shok al yarech, shok al yarech, hip and thigh. Very interesting expression here. So come back next week, and I hope to explain it satisfactorily. Okay?
Actually 2 weeks.
Excuse me?
Actually 2 weeks.
Oh, yes. As a matter of fact, thank you for the reminder. Folks, I won't be around. I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary. Let me just stop sharing here. One moment. Yeah, unfortunately, I'll be out next week. I'll be celebrating my 20th anniversary with the wifey.
Unfortunately?
Oh, I said unfortunately?
Sorry about that.
Mamma mia. I must have had unfortunately on the slide still in my mind.
Oh, man.
Oh, that's a blunder, huh?
Well, I think you've got enough to deal with once we finish our broadcast. We got something prepared for next week too. So, in lieu of Herman and the
Well, Bob, what I meant to say is, unfortunately, I won't be here, but I'm going to be with the wifey. That's what I think I meant to say. I hope I meant to say that. But yeah, folks, in 2 weeks, come back. Of course, come back next week with Bob. But in 2 weeks, I hope to share about that expression, that very unusual expression, hip and thigh. Okay. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Bob. Thank you so much, folks.
Oh, man. And also, just this is, as you were saying about the endless need for bloodlust and revenge, we see that Yahweh had the wisdom to devise 6 cities of refuge, for which those who would have been the recipient of vengeance could flee to. And unless it was a deliberate thing, an accidental thing, or something that would require a vengeance upon them.
Right. Bob?
Yeah.
I know it's off topic, but the interesting thing about that is that freedom would come to the manslaughter, the person that's charged with manslaughter, when the high priest dies. Isn't that interesting?
It is.
When the high priest dies, right, and who's our high priest? When he dies, that is what brings about the freedom of him who is caught in this dilemma. Interesting parallelism. Off topic, but I just needed to share that.
And again, who is the high priest in Messiah's day? But he who decided that Messiah should go and he should stay. So he gives Messiah's life to protect his own skin. So anyway, I'm going to just read one more thing from Hadassah.
Yeah.
With regards to like Solomon's life story. The world is like a soap opera.
Yeah, the soap opera, yeah.
Okay, as the world turns, right? The only difference is that the one watching all the story is going to ask for an account. Yes, he's going to demand an account. My goodness, the brownie points. Okay.
The brownie points.
Yeah. But thank you again for watching, and we thank you for all those, including Dr. Smithers. I hope that your curiosity has been met, and you come and visit us in our future broadcasts. We are here every Sabbath morning at 11 a.m. and then every Wednesday evening for the midweek at 7:30 p.m. So I thank you so much for all of you contributing tonight for a lively discussion, and again for Herman doing all that extra research, and we're very grateful.
Thank you.
And we pray that Yah would continue to bless the speaker and hearers of the word, that we truly form the unity that Yah would have us form, the Echad, to be Echad even as he is Echad. He wants us to be one. Patricia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. Would you please do us the honor of a final prayer?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
Avino Malkeinu,
Father and our King,
our Father, we honor you and praise you for who you are. And great is your faithfulness unto us. We thank you for your guidance each day. We ask you to bless this family here tonight. And thank you for all the blessings you bestow upon us each day. Bless and protect each one of us. You are so worthy to be praised. We thank you for all things. To Yeshua be all glory, honor, and praise. Amen.
Amen. Amen. And also, once again, congratulations to Herman and Gladys for 20 años, for 20 years.
20 years
of bliss.
Thank you. Yep.
Not unfortunately, but
no, Bob. You know what? What I meant to say. Unfortunately, I won't be here next week.
Too late.
That's what I meant to say. You cut me off. You cut me off, and then it sounded like I said, "Unfortunately, I'm celebrating." No, I remember now. But it's all good.
All right. So again, we say shalom, shalom. We say laila tov lehitraot. We say good night.
Thank you.
And we will check you out a little further down the road to Yeshua P.
He said congrats.
My name Hadassah. And congrats, yes. And me says congrats also
Thank
the
you.
truth, the life, and the way. Amen.
Thank you.
Shalom, shalom, everybody. We love you, and thank
Shalom.
you so much for joining us, whether you're watching us live or whether you're on us later on. We also would suggest please subscribe and stay on our up to date list, and continue to check in on us. And we say shalom, shalom, and we say todah rabah. We say thank you so much. We say good night.
Good night, folks. Thanks for signing on.